In this video, we're going to talk about how to cultivate self-love in midlife and beyond and why it's important and what really is self-care. So some of the things that we're going to discuss in the video are meeting resistance in middle age, how our self-confidence often declines and how to get it back, physical and mental changes that are happening during midlife and how I'm navigating those changes for an optimal wellness, how to put yourself first without the guilt, getting back into your feminine energy so that you can feel confident, vibrant, and happy. So let's just get into the video. So the first thing we're going to talk about is why is it important to have self-love in the first place? So there's this big trend of the self-love movement, and I love it. And I think that for inner work, of really reflecting, and I think this takes a lot of deep reflection. And I think it's very important in midlife, and oftentimes it just comes up in midlife. I think that midlife is a gift. I think that midlife is more of an awakening time. And I think that if we listen to what really we're going through in midlife, that we can really learn all of these things about ourselves so that we can really cultivate self-love and have a deeper connection with ourselves so that we can have a more fulfilling, meaningful life. It's important to have self-love because everything you see in your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. So everything you choose, every behavior that you have, all of your relationships, all of your choices, your goals, whether you achieve your goals, whether you think you can achieve your goals, all of these things are a result of your inner feelings about yourself, which is really your inner self-love. And when you don't have self-love, it really affects in your life. Everything, your relationships, your fulfillment in life, your jobs, your career, your goals, everything in your life is affected by your self-love and everything is impacted by your self-love. So the first thing I want to talk about is the resistance to midlife. So a lot of times when we get into midlife, there is a certain time that will hit you that you aren't young anymore, right? For me, it was right around age 46, which was a couple of years ago. I never felt my age, and I still don't really feel my age, but I do feel more now than I did, I feel like. But around 46, I've had an awakening for the last several years. So for the last 8 years, I've been going through an awakening process. But for the last 2 years, I've really been going through even deeper awakening. And so much so that I haven't recognized myself. And I was rapidly seeing changes as far as aging goes, in my body and in my mental health, physical health, and everything. And I was noticing that I was starting to have resistance to it. So I didn't hit that when I turned 40, having that feeling of I didn't want to get older, or I didn't hit it I didn't feel it when I hit 45 either. But it just, for some reason, randomly at 46, I started having this resistance around it. And when you resist something, it persists, right? So it's not going to help you through the process because aging is inevitable regardless. And so it's learning how to navigate this experience, midlife and beyond, and this aging experience. It's learning to navigate it with a lot of self-love and a lot of self-compassion. And I really feel like that it starts there in order to navigate all of the other things that go along with it. It has to start with the self-love, which really starts with self-compassion, in my opinion, and in my experience personally. So the next thing I want to talk about is how our self-confidence will often decline in this time during midlife. And I think this goes along with what I was saying with the aging, is we start to resist. And I think this goes along with just the natural aging process. So we start to see that our body doesn't look the same. We start to see that our body doesn't function the same. We start getting symptoms that we're getting older. Maybe our knees and our hips are cracking and popping, and we're not as flexible as we used to be. And we can't fit into the same clothes, and we don't look like we used to look when we were younger, and we're not supposed to. But it does a lot of times affect our self-confidence because, like I said, you might just wake up one day in your midlife and you might look yourself in the mirror and you're like, who is that person? And that's me a couple of years ago. And so it kind of drops your self-confidence, or it can majorly drop your self-confidence. And there are definitely ways to get it back. And that's something that I'm working through right now. And I don't have that perfect, because self-confidence, it's a complex thing. And I think that is something that I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with, but definite women in midlife for sure. And so I'll talk about some of the things as we go along about how I am working on my self confidence. But again, it goes back to self compassion. And when you start to give yourself compassion and love, then the confidence will automatically come into play. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is that you're probably seeing a lot of physical and mental changes that are happening in your midlife. Obviously, you may have a chronic illness. You may have been diagnosed with mental health issues. Maybe you may be having a lot of chronic pain or things of this nature. And this is a time when your body is sending you messages and with the symptoms that you're having to get your attention. And so if you haven't been paying attention before, or when you're younger, a lot of times you're able to ignore things for quite a while, and then there comes a point when you can't. And so for me, my body was screaming at me for certain things and in certain ways. And so it's a time to really listen to those messages. And for me personally, I believe that symptoms are messages. So if you're having chronic digestive issues, for instance, there is a reason for that, and it can be many things. So it's really listening to those messages and understanding what really it could be. It could be something as deep as trauma is stored in the gut, in the womb, in the hips. It could be something energetic. It doesn't necessarily mean that because it's a physical symptom that it's not an emotional root problem. And so that's why it's so important to be connected to your body and really listen to what these messages are, so that we can have optimal health. And so for me, I personally have been diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder several years ago. And I personally, in my opinion, for myself, I believe that it came from unresolved trauma and unresolved emotions that I've carried in my body for a long time. Now, me, I also don't believe that things are just that simple, black or white. I do think that our bodies and our minds and everything are very complex. And I think that it can be a multitude of things. So if you're not eating whole food and you're not sleeping and you have unresolved trauma, then that may be what pushed your body over the edge. It may not have just been anything, like you weren't eating well. So I feel like that it is a multitude of things that play in, but it can be certain things that just push it on over the edge. And there is a lot of actual research on and autoimmune disorders, and women have higher rates of autoimmune disorders. And I do know that there is a lot of research out there about that right now. And so this is just really me listening to my body and doing the things necessary to work with the trauma, unresolved trauma, and unresolved emotions that are deep within me. And alongside that, I'm also doing things to help my body. I'm trying to eat as much whole foods as I can, and I'm getting sun every day. Or days, not very sunny today, but I still getting the electromagnetic spectrum of light from the sun, which is healing to our bodies, right? And I'm still trying to prioritize my sleep, which isn't great because I have high cortisol level and a lot of stress in my life. So it's not perfect, but I'm taking the steps necessary to try to prioritize my sleep, because I know that sleep is what repairs our bodies, and it puts our bodies in a state of autophagy and apoptosis when we're sleeping, and it's basically just cell repair on a very deep mitochondrial level. And so I just feel like that, and I do just feel like that in midlife, that this is very important, because we don't have the privilege of being young anymore and our bodies being as resilient. We have to listen, and we have to take action, and have to see it as our bodies are truly sending us a message. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is how to put yourself first and to choose yours during this time without the guilt. Now, this is a hard one for me. This is a hard one for a lot of people. So our culture automatically it is just an automatic, that women naturally naturally abandon themselves in order to take care of others. So that is just part of our job as women, right? And if you also have been raised by women, this may go back generations, where you have learned to put others first and you have learned to abandon yourself. And for me, even I had a double whammy of I chose a career in the nursing field. So that field, quite literally, you're caring for others and you are literally abandoning yourself. And you are you're neglecting yourself many times while you're working. I did this in one of my other video. I work a 12-hour shift, and I might realize that I've been there for 7 or 8 hours, 6 or 7 hours, and I haven't went to the bathroom, or I didn't get to eat my meals, or I may not have eaten all day, and or I did. I was standing up and hurrying and swallowing something really fast, and just neglecting my basic needs. Not even sitting down to like think of what else I might need as far as my emotional bandwidth, but just my basic needs were neglected. And as a mother, I did this as well. I all the times, and you know, ways you have to, because if you've got small children, they can't care for themselves, and there are things we have to do as moms to take care of them. You have to make sure they're eating, and sometimes you don't get to eat your food, or you eat it cold, and that's okay. That's being a mother, but I'm talking about really, truly neglecting yourself. Like, okay, now and then you get to midlife and you realize, because your body and your mind are screaming at you, and because now you have chronic problems, right? Because you neglected yourself. So choosing yourself and putting yourself first is important, because you still want to care for other people. And if you are a nurturer by nature, you know, to do those things, and you know who you are. And that's naturally who I am. But you can't properly take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself. And I said this in the other video, that, you know, you can't give from a glass half empty. And so you have to put yourself first. Now, without carrying the guilt, that's the hard part. So you may be like, okay, well, I'm putting myself first. I don't care who needs what today. Today, choosing myself. But then there's this guilt that you think about, you should be doing other things, or what if someone else needs something, or I shouldn't be doing this, or all this talk comes in. And I struggle with that. So one of the things that I've actually been doing is parts work, and you know, probably going to require you to work with a professional, so either a therapist or a life coach, to do a parts integration work, or IFS, internal family systems. I'm working with a therapist. I learned about parts work whenever I became a life coach years ago, and I learned about parts integration, but I needed something deeper. And I've been working with a therapist lately, and you know, working with the guilt part. IFS allows you to go in and work with that guilt part of you, really find out where it resides in your body, and connect on a somatic level in your body, and allow it to be what it is. Understand that this is a part of you. It's not the whole you, and why that part is there. So that guilty part is there for a reason. It took place at a time in your life for a reason, to either protect you, or, you know, coping mechanism, and it's there for a reason. And so you allow it some room, and you observe it without any type of judgment, and you allow it to be there. When we work with the different parts of ourselves without judgment, we start to become whole, and we start to more of this acceptance for ourselves and self-love for ourselves. So that's one of the things that I'm doing. So the next thing I'm going to talk about, how to cultivate self-love in midlife, is to get into your feminine energy. And this will help you be more confident, more vibrant, more, you know, happier, joyful, like fulfilled. And if you've been operating from a masculine, like I was for a lot of my life, then you need to get back into your feminine. So everybody has feminine and masculine energies. And when you get back into your feminine energy, it's more of the nurturing energy, right? It is more softer. It's more of the nurturing. So it's important to nurture your, and doing self-love practices is nurturing for yourself. So, you know, do things that's softer, We're going to do things with more mindfulness and just slowing down. And maybe it's, bath with rose petals and lighting a candle and putting lotion on and putting on some silk pajamas. Like, that's like help. It's all self-care, and that's also a feminine way to do self-care. And that helps me get back into my feminine, but there's also ways, obviously. Mindfulness is very important too. So, like, just down and, coffee in the morning. If you've always been in hustle mode and hustle culture and you're masculine, running around and trying to get to work and take the kids here and there and practice and dance, like I always was, hurry and drink your coffee and slurp it down. And that is where that's conducive to a healthy life for me now anymore, and for my nervous system, and for what I want in my life, and how I want to live the second half of my life. And if I'm always rushing around and feeling like chaos, which how I felt a lot in my life, that doesn't feel very self-loving and feminine for me. And so slowing down and nurturing myself and slowly making my coffee, that smell when I'm brewing it and pouring it into my favorite mug, and does it taste, like really tasting it? Like, do you even taste your coffee? you know, just trying to hurry and get the caffeine going in your blood. So it's just these things that have helped me cultivate self-love and self-compassion. And this is what, in my opinion, helps with long-lasting fulfillment and transformation. Because I said earlier, your outer reflection of your world, like I said earlier, your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. And so, outer world, if we want to have different outcomes, and if we want to experience life in a different, more way, then we have to start with self-love. And so, with that, I hope you liked this video. And if you did, I hope you'll follow me along on my journey in midlife and how I'm navigating all of the things. So if you did, like and subscribe, and hope to see you in future videos.